Hello, 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 hello. Welcome to your reading. Let's get right into the business. All right. So let me hide the name. Okay. And let's do this. And let's do that. Okay. So I tend to go on and off camera. All right, so we got a 28-degree Taurus rising with a gem moon. Not many aspects in this chart that I see so far. A Cap Sun exactly conjunct Mars and Cap. Damn, that is a very, very, very strong Capricorn energy. And 29 degrees, Sag, Mercury conjunct Venus. Damn. All right, all right, all right, all right. And you got Pluto on the descendant, and you've got Chiron over there in Bugs. And you got your moon with the south node. That's interesting. And the north node is in Sag. All right. Well, to start off, oh, that's funny. Uh, if you if you were watching like my readings, you would see that the one the last two I just had were the same north nodes. Um, so South Node, North Node. So the journey from Gemini to Sag, right, on a karmic level, the South Node obviously represents the been there, done that. It's not a bad energy. It's just an energy that you know, you're trying to move away from, right? You're trying to be more in the Sag energy. And when we look and we see if there's any squares, a square of Saturn, yeah. So basically, I like to start with the karma sometimes, the karmic aspects. So when I see, Saturn squaring the nodes, a square to the nodes is about a karmic skip step. And I always, when I see Saturn squaring, I always think of in past lives, especially as the South Node Gemini, there was a level of conditioning, right? From society, most likely. It could have been religion, it could have been something, it's something that keeps one in the like the Gemini kind of in the immediate environment, and it kind of keeps one from like some level of conditioning that kind of kept you from finding truth, right? um so it's about, yeah, it could be through family, society, religion, anything like that, any broader historical societal theme there. But then what happens is, there's some level of repression, right? Like, for example, the person in today's world who believes everything they hear on the news, everything they hear. I'm not saying that to you. I'm just saying because, like, in other historical times, obviously we didn't have the internet and all that. It's a lot harder to get information. So, the Saturn skip step is really, really about a need for maturing in this life, in the sense of really taking responsibility for one's own life, um, and not falling into, like, so it's really, it's not, it's like taking responsibility for a lot in life, especially when it comes to your I talk about this a lot in my readings about your um journey towards higher truth, right? One second, I need to close this window. So I always talk about how, I was just kind of talking about it, how it really is our quote unquote personal truth that guides our life, right? So in this life, you're really trying to move away. So it's awesome that you found spirituality, because you're really trying to move away from past life conditioning. So, um, with the Sag North node, it's really about, trying on a lot of different philosophies and, traveling, getting yourself out of like the immediate bubble. But also besides that, with the Saturn skip step, there can be like, you know, like this feeling when you come into this lifetime of like having like some kind of guilt, like coming in with like feeling like there was some type of like, you know, baggage that you entered this life with, right? Um, so it's not as much like with Mercury, it's more about like introjects and self-limiting beliefs. But this one is it's way more about like getting past like different, mistakes from past lives and really kind of taking on a completely different life path. Um, so when you have the Saturn return, right, which you're going through right now, right? Where's your Saturn? It is there. Yeah. So you're in the midst of your Saturn return. So this is a very good time for you to have this reading because it really speaks of the importance of the Saturn return. Um, so you know, the South Node being ruled by Mercury, um, that can also speak to because of those past life whatevers. Um, there can be some kind of self-limiting beliefs there, right? So when you have a 29-degree Sag Mercury, that really, and you have Venus there too, that really, really facilitates that North Node journey, right? So, Sag, it's really asking you to, to look for different arenas, different areas of, different ways to really, yeah, really broaden your worldview. Um, and what's nice, so then the North Node ruled by Jupiter. Jupiter is the planet of expansion. So we can get clues about, what area of life you can really find that expansion. Of course, like it's, the eighth house is where the Sag energy is. That the Jupiter is hiding for me right now is in the seventh house of relationships. And Placidus should be in the sixth house. And the Placidus house is my use whole signs. So, you can look at that in two different ways. Um, one way it can be through like relationships, partnerships, relationships, that you really find your, you could have like partners that really teach you a lot. You learn a lot through relationships. And yeah, especially like with the Sagittarian energy, um, it could be like, partners from different cultures and it could also be, just teachers as well as one. Um, and in the sixth house, um, it could be about, your service to humanity, right? Because it's in Scorpio. So Scorpio, Jupiter people are very, very, very good when it comes to having this kind of built-in bullshit monitor. And, the more that you can kind of open yourself up to being of service, whether it's to your profession or just in your everyday life, or just spirituality in general, like your own spiritual journey. So it kind of like speaks to like the Sagittarius, and the like the eighth house Sagittarius and the ninth house, or yeah, eighth house Scorpio, kind of eighth house Scorpio representing that deep kind of dive within, which is shown by your eighth house. To have like Sagittarius in your eighth house, it really does speak of like, so like, when you are, with your Dharma, right? Um, with your Dharma, as I was saying, it's completely dependent on your worldview. So, for you, with the midheaven in Capricorn, with Uranus and Neptune there, like people who I see who have that, um, I've very seldom seen people who have that who um, are not doing so. I mean, usually they're people who are doing something like career wise that really benefits the world, right? So yeah, and with Saturn in the 10th house, there's a very important mission for you. But it could, as I was saying before, like, there could have been delays to really finding that true purpose until potentially around now. So, let's see here. Um, the North Node in the 8th house, South Node in the 2nd, it's things like astrology. It's things like psychology, right? It's these, if we look at your Pluto on the descendant, right, on the 7th house cusp, we think about how, how Pluto is like where we face our darkness, right? Um, we all have darkness and whatnot. And what can happen with the 7th house Pluto is that can really come out in the realm of relationships. So, there can be this real importance of using relationships, or like being able to use relationships as a way to kind of like almost gauge like where you're at, I guess. Because Pluto 7th house people, they tend especially early on to have like very like until like a certain like level of evolutionary level is reached, there can be the darkness, like their personal darkness and shadow can really come out in relationships. And those can, yeah, you have Jupiter there too, so there's a lot of learning there. But yeah, it can really be like a lot of the clues to like where the work is needed can come out through that mirror of other, right? And then it's through that mirror of other that you then take that dive within, right? Through that mirror of other, um 7th house, then the 8th house is like, okay, I see what I need to change. And with Venus there and Mercury exactly conjunct, um, it would make one really, really more oriented towards, um, subject matters that delve beneath the surface. It would give one a very big interest in, just humans in general, like what makes people really, really function on that deep level, right? So, yeah, so really exploring those realms is really important. Now, so then, and then with your sun being in the 9th house, you see it's the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th in the zodiacal story, where you have the relationships. Those really show you a lot. You learn a lot through them. That then takes you into kind of your own, um, you know, eighth house, right? The Scorpio house, the house of shadow work and whatnot. And because you have Venus there, when you have Venus in the eighth house and it's 29 degrees, which is something else we'll talk about, there's really this kind of like this real advantage of understanding. It's like having a lantern in the areas of life that, are the darkest and the most difficult for people to kind of get a grasp of. But when you have Venus or Jupiter there, it opens the gates to the unknown, the gates to the areas of life that most people are afraid of even like, things like life after death, just like really answering the big questions, the real important questions. So yeah. Um, and then, having your sun in the ninth house with your Mars, that's going to give this big push towards traveling physically / traveling metaphorically, right? That's what I always say. Um, and so it's like once the person has, who has these houses like really highlighted in a sequence, once you do all that inner work, and this is like an ongoing thing throughout life. So once the inner work is done, then there's like okay, well, it's never really done. You know what I mean though. Like once that that part of life is really looked at, um, you're able to really move into other areas. And that's like a big part. Then the house of the sun, that's where like, the major life purpose is playing out, right? So, being able to like really, and that goes back to the past life stuff, right? Because with the conditioning, like with the Saturn square, it's likely that, there's past lives where you were in a position that didn't enable you to kind of like see all that is. So now you enter this life and there's so many opportunities, right? And the soul is asking for adventure. It's asking for this deep, it's Capricorn. So there's a level of seriousness there, right? There's a level of really wanting to go in and figure it out. So, I think for you, like traveling would be so massive. The more different types of, whether it's teachers or classes or whatever, that have different kind of like it's really important for you in this lifetime. Like a huge thing is to be a truth seeker, and to really like be very open-minded and have that real intellectual open-mindedness. um Sorry, I have cat hair everywhere over my face. It's annoying. Yeah, to have that real, always asking, always never being satisfied with what and always wanting more and always updating. Okay, this is what I feel is true right now. Um but let's see, what someone else from, like let's just see other people's truth, like why do some people, like a good example in the US is like, there's the conservative people and there's the liberal people, right? And I'm a Sag moon, so this is like a good example. um a few years ago, because I grew up in like the very liberal parts of the US, my family is very liberal, but I was just curious. I was like, you know one half of the US, and I'm not French American, but I grew up in the US. um you know one aspect, I just wonder, I was like, half of the country can't just be crazy, like the media talks about and like people around me kind of talked about. So I set out on a quest, to see like what, like, why do conservative people think the way they do. And it was just very interesting. And that's just one example of just hearing people out, right? So that's like a huge thing right off the bat. And because you have Mars there too, and you have Uranus and Neptune, I have allergies. My throat, so annoying. Um, so because you have Neptune and Uranus there, people who have that, they can be in the most like religious families, whatever, right? But they will not believe, and that goes back to your Chiron, or goes to your Chiron. They won't just believe something for no reason. God, just have to wipe my face with that towel because these cats are getting their fur all over my face. Okay. So yeah, you see, like, you have these two babies up here, and so it's connected. So people who have like the Uranus and the Neptune in the ninth, go camera on for a little bit. So much fur. Okay. Um, you know, like the Uranus in the ninth, it's all about developing like a very like original philosophy for life. And it makes them very rebellious against any kind of like orthodox, or any kind of religion that's pushed on them, or any kind of philosophy that's pushed on them. And this goes complete. See how I started with the karmic stuff? Um, you know, you have these energies here because like a big part of your it looks like I'm like on drugs or something, but I'm just like okay. Yeah, it's just very, very rebellious on like a philosophical level. And having Neptune there will give one more of like a spiritual outlook towards their beliefs, right? They'll be searching for the perfect philosophy. Usually there's like a level early on. Esme, are you gonna help me for once tonight? Your first time? Okay, well, you're lucky you have Miss Esme. Esme, do your thing. Can you look at the chart and tell me what to look at? You looked right at the right what I was talking about. I'm not gonna kiss you. You're gonna get me all fluffy. Oh my god, still did. I'm like not allergic to cats, but Esme, you didn't even do anything. Maybe just go wash my face or something. Okay, whatever. So yeah, basically, there's this massive push towards like finding the perfect philosophy and just not believing, what you might have. So you see how these are connected, right? Um, One thing about South Node and Gemini people, right, is that there can be this because the North Node, right? The North Node is not. It's like the metaphoric mountain you're trying to climb, but it's not easy, right? There's usually some pushback. So, you know, sometimes the people who have the Gemini South Node, they have trouble taking those risks, you know. Um, and yeah, it can just be difficult. Esme, stop. You have to go away. I'm sorry. I love you, but just making me worse. So yeah, there's just so much energy in this chart, because like then when you talk about 29-degree energies, right? Your Venus and your Mercury are there in Sag. So that's just like the ultimate, like in this lifetime, like the big, big staple for this chart is beliefs, right? Truth. because you have a very special purpose with, the Neptune, Mars, Uranus all together. Well, actually, no, not Mars. Mars is further down. Mars is the sun, but they're still in that house. So, oh my God. Uh, so yeah, there's that big push to expand the mind and to always be doubting, always be doubting what you hear. So when we talk about the fact that you have this Gemini energy, your moon, right? Moon, most important part of the chart, in my opinion, um, with the South Node. So when you have moon with the South Node, it means a lot of different things, right? Um, Basically, it means that a lot of the emotional content from past lives is still passed on into this life. But there's a way but because your chart is made in this very specific way, it's very useful to understand the axis of Gemini and Sag, right? Because this is the axis of Gemini, which your moon sign. So that's like, your emotional needs. It's your, kind of just like what what it's your inner environment. It's what makes you feel secure, comfortable. Um, so that being with the South Node will most definitely, there'll be a lot of karma replayed in this lifetime, whether, the moon often represents the mother. So um, there'll be some kind of a mimicking potentially, right? Of and you have moon square Chiron also, which is interesting. So, and I don't really like to use like the moon or the sun as mom or dad because I've just seen it go so many different ways. But I think of the moon as the early nurturing also. And when it's square Chiron, um, a lot of times the individual is, there's a lot of wounding, right? And feeling very misunderstood, usually by the mother, but not always. Um, and because you have all these different philosophies, it makes me kind of wonder if um, there was some of that early conditioning. Um, and when you have like, and this so many of my clients have this kind of like thing that I've kind of figured out, which is like, Chiron, which represents the wound, right? It's in a Mercury sign. It's in the fifth house. And what that tends to mean is that, like I said, feeling misunderstood. And there can be someone who has all of these like very original, very unique way of thinking about life, right? Um, who spends, with that Sagittarius energy and the Gemini energy, who spends a lot of time, really thinking about things very deeply, thinking about philosophies very deeply. What philosophies, and what truths do I want to guide my life? It's your sun, ninth house, like that is such a huge, massive purpose, right? So, um, there can be a level of needing to kind of, I wouldn't say separate from the family necessarily. That's not what I mean. Um, More so blazing your own path, you know? Um, Now it's not a square to the nodes, it's a conjunction, but still, you know, when we think about Gemini, we think about the immediate environment. People, Gemini moons, they are very, very much, they're very curious about life. They want to do a lot. They want to speak to a lot of people. It's very social. It gives that real need to just communicate with a lot of different types of people. But the right balance between Gemini and Sag is, think of Gemini as the journalist. It's the part of us that goes out, gets all the information. But there's too much Gemini, right? There's just all this information, but it hasn't been transformed into guiding philosophies that then guide your career. and your dharma, whatever, that is. It's not always career, like your real external life purpose. And being that's your Saturn return now, it's likely that you're really, really coming into this now, and you're really, really, like I said earlier, just really things are opening up a lot, and a lot of the things that maybe pushed you back in the past. And it's hard to see when you're in the thick of your Saturn return, but when it clears, there's just like this brand new maturity. And yeah, but back to what I was saying. Yeah, so too much Gemini, it's a little bit, it's like jack of all trades, master of none. And it can kind of not go deep enough, if you know what I mean. But then when you have Sag, right? The Sag is where you take all of that data, from all of the different connections and all the different people you meet, all the different conversations and data, I guess, about life. And Sag is where you take those kind of like a research paper and you transform them into your truth, right? And then, your truth ultimately is what guides you to create that, to really be out of that past life conditioning, and to really be doing something or doing some things that relate to your best gathering of what is real in this world and what really matters. So an example also is like, I always talk on my page about um, the metaphysical value of something one can be doing, and the physical value, right? So in one person's worldview, perhaps, the metaphysical value, like let's say even for like content, right? Easy example. So it's like me, like I'm a content creator. If I create, for example, the choice between one post that maybe it's like, let's call it like pop astrology, I know it's going to get a bunch of likes, but it's not really, diving that beneath the surface. Or, so the physical value would be more, right? Because I like, from the sense of like, getting likes and getting engagement, whatever, recognition, whatever. But then let's say I can make like a 15-minute video that maybe, not that many people will finish, but it's such a deep video that it could be life-changing for a few people, right? So it's like, what is the metaphysical value, right? Or what's more important, the physical or the metaphysical? And different people would argue different things. People who are really in the physical, they might just think, oh, money's all that matters, money, success, how I'm seen by others, and so forth. So it's really, really getting firm with that. So to have, these two conjunct, Mercury and Venus, that's a beautiful, at 29 degrees, the last degree, right? It's really showing how this lifetime is such an important one, in the sense of learning everything related to Sagittarius, of this truth, right? And you have all of these alignments in your chart that are speaking and showing this. So it's this constant kind of like going through that 7, 8, 9, 10, right? Relationship, partnerships that mirror what needs to be changed within you, and then updating those internal changes, that death, rebirth, transformation, letting go of, aspects of yourself that are no longer needed, which then enables you to go out in the world and, be very open-minded and just find more and more truth, which then goes to your career, or, what you deem is most important, right? Oh God. Ah. So, and having Venus and Mercury together is really good for being able to express yourself in a very loving and kind manner, even with like, very, very, even if there's subjects that are controversial because maybe you see things that a lot of people don't, right? And that plus, so it makes you a very, very good listener. Um, and it makes someone really with that conjunction exact, really, able to put people at ease with their words. Almost like very, very good when it comes to speaking. But this is the thing with the Chiron squaring the moon, there could have been that internalized early feeling that that like in the fifth house that the creative expression early on maybe was somehow like wounded, right? Where there's someone or something kind of preventing you from like really being in that inner child, because as like to really be creative and to really really be able to flow in life, you have to be in touch with that inner child, that inner weirdness that we all have, right? um So it's really about this quest for you. And then with Virgo, yeah. So the fifth house part is about the quest for you to get in touch with your own inner child creative powers, right? And then the Virgo part, that speaks, Virgo is the mind as well. So there can be different introjects, different self-limiting beliefs that come from a feeling of being misunderstood early on and being shut down for your beliefs, even if they're potentially, like I say with some of my clients, like ahead of the parents or ahead of what was going on at the time. Some people with Chiron and Virgo also, like there's this strong link between the emotions and like in the like psychosomatic and the physical health, right? And some people with that, they can fear emotion, um, and fear that going deep, right? So it makes like being of service to humanity really important. It's very good for being a healer. Um, but like every healer has to go through their own healing journey. So with the fifth house Virgo Chiron, it could really be linked to it can be really linked to finding finding that inner, authentic self-expression, right? And that is moving away from conditioning. It's like the idea of art, um, what's called art therapy, right? Where there's no right answer. You're just drawing, and that drawing or whatever is reflecting your authentic self, right? Writing poetry that no one else has to see, right? But it's reflecting you internally, and in that process, you're getting to know yourself on a deeper level better, right? So yeah, it's just that kind of back and forth. And as a Gemini moon, so other things about Gemini moon is that Gemini moons, like I said, very curious. There's social butterflies. I remember during COVID, I was like telling the Gemini moon people, like, those are the people that, they can actually like, and you are a very deep person, but the Gemini moon, it can kind of have you have like one foot in like the the really really deep, and then one foot in the ability to kind of be social and really really, which is really good, right? To really connect with different people. And what I was saying before was like, during COVID, when like I like the Gemini moons I talked to were the ones who like um you know had maybe the most issues, like really really missing being able to just connect on that just kind of like, even like small talk can be something that feels emotionally nice um for Gemini moons. And Gemini moon also, you know inherent in Gemini moon is, so, and I always talk about like romantic stuff when I talk about these two. And I know you said that in your email. Let me just relook at, yeah, love, relationships, purpose, and careers. Yeah. So like you know, FedEx, you are not getting close to me right now. No, FedEx. Gemini moon definitely in love, like sometimes there can be like that grass is greener type of energy. Um, so they, there's that huge need to have the intellectual connection with partners and with friends and all that. And, freedom is so important for Gemini moon. Like they need to feel like they're not stopped by anything because they're, like I said, you're here to explore. You're here to really explore. Um, and also when you have a moon in the air sign, right? Sometimes it can be difficult and you do lack um water in your chart in terms of personal planets. So, um, sometimes there can be difficulty with like connecting to emotions. So I always tell people who lack water, first of all, like taking baths, drinking lots of water, living by water, being by water, those types of things are really good. Going in the rain to cleanse your energy, your aura, that's really, really good. Um, but really it's just like, you know, putting yourself in positions to really feel your emotions, whether it's like watching a movie that makes you cry, because sometimes the mercurial moons, right, the Gemini and the Virgo moons, they can have difficulty with, like, sometimes it's too much logic applied to emotions, right? And emotion is energy, it's energies that have to be kind of felt and moved through. So yeah, that's one big thing there. um and yeah, there's just that real need for mental stimulation. So, Gemini moons are usually very intelligent, and they just are seeking answers to so many questions. They like to talk a lot. And yeah, they just like stimulation activity, and it's a very fun moon sign. But let's see here. So it's nice that you have Capricorn, even though they're your sun and moon are quincunx. Um, it still is nice because that gives you a level of it gives you a level of grounding, right? Because it's an earth sign. But sun, moon, quincunx means they're 150 degrees away, and it's pretty much right on the dot. So what can happen there is it can give a very changeable personality, like inconsistent moods. Um, and it can make it difficult to relax. And that's another thing about the Gemini moon. Sometimes that they need that groundedness, right? They need to find the things that really, really, really make them light their fire. Or else there can be kind of anxiety is something with Gemini moons, um, and just always looking, 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 right? So with this quincunx, right? And the quincunx is like where two energies know nothing about each other. Capricorn is very traditional. It's very masculine. It's masculine in the sense it's an earth sign. It's about building foundation success, more conservative, and Gemini is the opposite. It's mutable. It's go with the flow. So it's like, how do you feed those two sides, right? um, One that wants more stability, one that wants the opposite, one that wants to just like have all these experiences. So what can happen when you have that, and sometimes that does point to like the parents um having had like two very different messages that you got from each parent, like the main messages that we all have. Sometimes they're very unconscious, right? um because like, yeah, if one side of the personality dominates, um you can unconsciously like seek out the other side in other ways, like and it can make relationships difficult. But yeah, it can just, I think sun conjunct moon, there's that big potential for these big mood swings because of the need to feed these two sides of you that are very, very different. So um but what's good is that because the Capricorn's in the ninth house of Sagittarius, um there can most definitely be that same Capricornian energy applied to learning, to philosophy, to your truth, right? But I think like the best way to combine them is, the trial and error of the Gemini moon, uh, in the context of career, something that really, really like you love and that really, like, okay, this thing, I could literally do this the rest of my life and not get bored, right? But yeah, so there's that need for that equilibrium to be reached, Um, so yeah, a lot of people with this, there is usually a level of like anxiety, even insecurity. Um, but it also gives you this like chip on your shoulder. Um, but like the thing with this is that um yeah, like the trial and error, but then at some point really, kind of restricting yourself to a single goal or to like, one or two like main things, right? Um, and if those things can stimulate that Gemini side and also allow that building, that side of Capricorn that loves to build, then that to me is like the best way to work with that. So what else about that? Yeah, it's just like that energy that can just be like always on the go. And sometimes it can come from like abuse of power early on with parents. Any kind of like emotional manipulation early on would make this difficult. Um, but because there is a heightened energy, because the sun and moon are in an aspect, a powerful aspect, there is you know, like a lot of energy, right? Like I said, a chip on your shoulder. There's a lot of energy, and it is representative of someone who needs to, like I said, needs to blaze their own path. Not mom's path, not dad's path. Um, so it really does come from just like the kind of unconscious, subconscious awareness of how your energy works, and really becoming your own guru, and being able to like master like yourself, and this is astrology is giving you the tools to really understand that, right? What do I need to be balanced? Um, but ultimately, a lot of people who have these types of aspects where this is called quincunx or inconjunct or opposition, sun and moon, like they end up being quite successful. I mean, it really does go. It can really go lots of different ways, but I have sun square moon, and I've always felt it as like a big chip on my shoulder. And um, once I learned that I do need to take my own path, that's when I really empowered myself. So yeah, feeding both, feeding both. Um, like when I do therapy, for example, I talk to my therapist about splitting psychology, right? Where it's like, and I've defined the two sides, the Sag Leo side and the Pisces side, right? And, with my therapist, like we'll talk about like ways in my life where I'm not giving enough to one of the sides. You see what I mean? So it's different with Gemini, Capricorn, obviously, but there could be these different phases in life where you're very much in the Gemini, fast, 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 and then very much in the Capricorn, solidifying. Um, which can be interesting. You can really the key is to get them to work together. So then you add the fact that the moon is also involved in the quincunx with Mars, and the sun is conjunct Mars, right? Um, that is also interesting. But sun with Mars, it just means that that like it just pushes it gives a lot of leadership power. Um, and they're only 0.09 away. So you actually have a Sun Mars Cazimi, which is so rare. And that just gives you this really, really like, especially Mars and Capricorn, such a great placement. this amazing follow through power, right? So once you do find what if you have already, but like so many of the most successful clients I have Mars in Capricorn or something Saturnian about their Mars, because the first 30 years, especially as a Capricorn too, like there's a lot of difficulties, right? Um, it's like 3 steps forward, 4 steps back, that kind of thing, right? But then after the Saturn turns, like where you're at now, you left with that determination, that hard work, but without the karmic bullshit that keeps coming up. And that's why there's so many successful people, because they really have to work their asses off the first 30 years. Setbacks, perhaps it was like you had to take on a role in your family, that was kind of a leadership role early on, which would make sense with the Chiron the fifth. I see that a lot. But yeah, it just makes someone very hardworking, this conjunction, but also potentially impulsive. But the fact that it's in Capricorn will help that. And it just pushes that love for adventure even more. And it makes someone who's, it's kind of cool because it's like Capricorn is not the most risk taking, but having this conjunction, excuse me, will initiate you to take risks. But it's just about, yeah, not being too impulsive. But like I said, this isn't Sag energy. This, I mean, it's in the ninth house, but it's Capricorn. So you're probably good in that sense. But then with the moon quincunx Mars, that is, also like that need for grounding yourself, right? Because there can be like a individual kind of ability to be a little bit inconsistent, um, with your loved ones, with relationships, different mood swings, right? So that's why it's really important to have like a physical outlet, like sweating, working out in some way. Um, because yeah, like with the Gemini moon too, it can kind of make one, yeah, yeah, emotionally inconsistent, right? Um, and sometimes there can be that kind of like instant snapback, like instant emotional reactions, right? Um, so yeah, it's like this inner tension that can push one to react very quickly. So that's why the grounding, it's like, yeah, like when you have the stimulus and person says a triggering thing, instead of just reacting, triggering thing, with mindfulness, you have that space, mm, you know, and you can then sit and not react so quickly. So that's why it's like such a important thing for you to really gain that control of your reactions, and to really, with the eighth house energy you have, to dive deep into yourself and to figure out where those come from, right? So yeah, it's really about getting to understand this inner tension that's usually created by this. What else about that? Yeah, because like the more that you come to terms with understanding this kind of like, this dilemma, it just cures everything, And then when we talk about truth, that could represent the inner truth, right? Um, so yeah, just knowing who you are, really. So, okay, let's see. So yeah, with relationships, um, obviously I already, and your Taurus rising too, of course. So, Venus ruled chart, um, Venus and Sag people usually, Venus and Sag people love to travel. I've never met one Venus and Sag that just does not love other cultures, that does not just absolutely love the process of just like, whether it's just learning and just like embedding themselves in a different culture. Um, so a lot of people, excuse me, a lot of people with, you know, Venus Sages, they, they date people from different nationalities. It's very common. Mm, I'd say like most people that I know with that, like my girlfriend, have, Venus and Sag, they tend to date people from different cultures, and a lot of that is just like, it's that attraction to what's different, and it ultimately increases the worldview, and that goes back to the Jupiter in the seventh house potential for really learning a lot through your relationships and having higher perspective through them, even if Pluto there can cause a lot of darkness in that area until that certain evolutionary place is met. But this is the thing with Pluto in the seventh. There's a lot of surrender that's needed in relationships. They can take one of two paths. I'm going to go back on. So they can take, one of several paths, right? Like the Plutonian relationship. The first is that there can be just these massive power struggles, and relationships can literally be a battleground, a very like kind of egotistical battleground. So the key is surrender and just being very curious about, the truth. Um, really, really just like, because Pluto seventh house people, they're destined to have like the most like soul binding, two souls coming together, like very just like the most like more than romantic relationships. Um, so that's kind of like the goal, but it takes like I said, it takes a lot of surrender to get there. It takes a lot of being able to admit, you know, when you were wrong, or even if you weren't the one wrong, being able to like take responsibility, take that responsibility. um for example, like let's say you put yourself in like a bad relationship, being able to kind of like see your role in it, right? So people who have that, like I said, like I literally see it happen, and in different phases in life it can happen in different ways, where the person but yeah, it's when the person learns to see that, you know it's just a reflection, it's just a mirror, and to almost like, become grateful. And the thing about so what's really interesting is that, having having the Jupiter there tends to give very good luck in terms of the partners that one meets, right? um so it could be the case that, you get lucky in that sense, and really meet partners who are here to help you, um, even if it's not super obvious how, raise your consciousness. But having a seventh house ruled by Scorpio already, it can create a lot of drama in relationships, and it can really, make it so when we're talking about love in your chart, yes, definitely like, a great intellectual connection, a great philosophical connection. Do they have to believe in the same things you believe in exactly? No. Um, but on your North Node journey to Sag, the worst thing you could have is a situation where, you don't, and with all the other things I've seen, like a situation where, 1 second. So as I was saying, the worst thing that can happen is a situation um, where there's like I was like a battle, right? Um, and like the whole plutonian thing showing up. But the best thing is like um a relationship that is helping you move toward like where you have lots of space, lots of freedom, right? So it might not be the traditional relationship. It might be something because you might have ideas that are way different than that, you might have ideas that completely kind of go against um that knowledge. So um and then with your Juno is in Libra. So with your vertex and part of fortune in the sixth. So to me, that's definitely when I see Juno in Libra, which Juno is like the ideal mate, ideal, like more of like on a marriage level, right? I think, okay, well, definitely there's that need for balance, for very peaceful and like the ideal is like a very fair, very balanced, peaceful type of relationship, right? Um, and sixth house, that's kind of speaking to the more Capricornian part, where it is a level of consistency that you can rely on from that individual. Um, Knowing who that person is, just like knowing that you can depend on that soul, even if that soul is not completely in line, you guys don't like agree on every little thing. At least you can have you can have freedom with them. You can have a sense of soul recognition, um where it feels almost like family in a sense, right? Where people talk a lot about love relationships, and with all I've kind of learned and seen in that area, it's really, the best relationships a lot of times are ones that feel very normal, like there's not necessarily that feeling of like that very pink cloudy um a lot of people are just addicted to love, addicted to that kind of intoxicating feeling. And that's, some people, with the Gemini moon, sometimes there's a need to, have patience in that area, like I said, Gemini energy can get bored quite fast. Um, so Juno and Libra, when combined with all these other energies, is just, speaking to Libra being the sign of relationships, the sign of fairness, the sign of balance and of quiet and of peace and of beauty, of seeing the beauty in one another. Um, so ultimately, you have this Pluto, which is speaking to the intensity, and the transformational. But like I said, on the high, the whole goal with that is through your relationships, you transform and you go through death, rebirth, transformation, either that or, you know, you you just kind of have power struggle relationships that just don't work, um, where both, one or both parties are just kind of in this constant, and it can come down to if there are any like abandonment issues, right? Um, like let's say like not even just abandonment, like if there's any, like let's say like for example growing up with parents that gave, like my case, my parents got divorced and they were like screaming at each other a lot, like on the phone and stuff when I was pretty young. So I could have easily allowed that experience of what me as a kid saw love is, to dictate how my relationships would be. So it really does come down to really like doing that work to blaze your own path in that relationship area. So it's this mix of like extreme vulnerability and closeness with a lot of openness, that ultimately leads to, the Juno with the part of fortune and vertex, and all those two together. It's like, you know, your doorway to higher awareness, your flow state, your doorway to higher awareness is through these relationships that have this very beautiful kind of energy to them. Um, and yeah, even Venus and Mars are conjunct, just in different signs. So, um, that can definitely show itself in different ways. But having Venus at 29 degrees is just like 1000%. The key relationships are just going to be very, very karmic. You know, um, it's almost like final boss in a video game energy. So yeah, and then just Venus with Mercury just makes the idea of communication and just high philosophy. So I think that, like, yeah, like that. I just couldn't imagine um love for you not representing like a meeting of the minds, and really, really, really like a lot of interest um in how the other person sees the world, and um someone who is very, very open to truly seeing how you see it. Yeah, there's definitely a need for that. But yeah, back to what I was kind of saying before, North Node, people underlook the importance of North Node, in my opinion, when it comes to relationship astrology. Um, if that represents your mission and you have someone who isn't, you know, going that direction, who's kind of staying stuck in their beliefs and put in the process kind of pushing you back from, fully accessing the maximum heights of yours, then it's not the best. Not the best, not the best, not the best. Mhm. So if we think about the big three, we think about Capricorn Sun, Gemini Moon. We've already kind of gone into those, like, and then you add Taurus Rising. Taurus Rising, um, it gets along a lot more with, even though it is technically conjunct the moon, which when you have moon rising, that definitely makes you, and you have, this, the North Node. So another way showing that your partners are going to be super karmic is the North Node is conjunct the descendant and Pluto, right? So a big part, so going even like beyond the whole thing about wisdom and truth, another major, major, major life purpose thing for you is these very karmic relationships. So this Pluto and the North Node, right, with the descendant, which represents relationships, this right here is a major part of your chart. This together literally means that, and this together, that in past lives there has been a tendency to be a little bit, I don't want to say self-centered, but not willing to, and I have, a similar thing with my north node and south node, but not like not enough of a willingness to compromise. See? So, so, with the north node conjunct the descendant, there, yeah, like as I said a million times, that is one of the, like, if I had to post those, like, you know indicators that someone, is having very karmic relationships in this lifetime, like that would be pretty up there. And then you add Pluto conjunct, you know like the seventh house Pluto, and conjunct north node, which would be in the seventh house in Placidus. That's there too. So it's like everything I talked about these, this shadow coming out in relationships, that's just the arena of life. But the relationships themselves are not really reflecting, um like like they're just mirroring. That's all they're doing at the end of the day, is they're just mirroring what's beneath the surface. So yeah, lots of surrender needed in that area of life for sure. And then there's a lot of energy about being of service, and how by you being of service to the world, you really unlock your highest energy. So that's all over there. Then yeah, and then the sun is with Mars and Venus. So where you talked about the sun with Mars. Um yeah, there's just a lot of really nice aspects you have. Like sun with Venus is so nice. Sun with Venus on one side and Mars on the other, to where they form a midpoint on the sun, is really interesting. Um, the sun, your solar energy, really represents, like, the coming together of the masculine and the feminine, from the Venus and the Mars. Um, so you know when you are on your path, like your true path of dharma, and just finding the answers you're seeking, things are just going to work out. Things are just going to happen. Um, but as I was saying earlier, there's such a necessity for the South Node in Gemini, North Node in Sag to take those risks. I've seen it so many times where, there's just that, because the South Node can create these fears. And when the moon is with the South Node, um, yeah, it can definitely kind of, mean that a lot of the emotion, the moon is very karmic anyways, but it can really take a lot of the emotions, from past lives into this life, right? But like with South Node and the moon, a lot of people with this, it's like they're meant to learn through trial and error. So if there are mistakes, it's important to not have shame, especially as you enter your Saturn return, because we all make a fuck ton of mistakes. But this type of energy, and I'm sure your human design would, I guarantee you would agree with this. It's like, um, you know, really in that, there's, probably like, forget the profiles, but yeah, probably meant to make mistakes. It's more about learning, yeah, through trial and error, as opposed to like through books and learning through that experience. So, and yeah, those experiences, like in the end, they teach you to really harness your emotions, for the improvement of your overall life, and for the people around you. Um, but a big thing about that as well is like the need to let go of those past hurts or any past shame that might feel like they're holding you back from truly getting to that destiny. And sometimes that can show up as like not wanting to think big enough, you know, wanting to, staying in the Gemini, like, there's nothing wrong with living where you were raised, right? Nothing against that. Um, but there's definitely, with all the Sag energy, a need to see the world, a need to take risks that might not make any logical sense, but will lead you to to adventures. Because that's a lot with this kind of ninth house Sag energy. It's like for example, when I moved to Romania, and I'll talk about myself, but like I had nothing here. I just went with a feeling. And when you have Jupiterian energy, Sag energy, God repays you when you take these risks, and they don't have to make logical sense. See, that's another thing with the Gemini Mercury stuff, is that sometimes it can be a little bit overly analytical, and sometimes analysis, so it's like, it's good to have logic, of course. Um, it's stupid to just make like really dumb decisions that are illogical, but sometimes in life you gotta just say, fuck it, this feels right, you know? So with the lack of water, another part besides the emotional aspects, um, is getting in touch with the intuition and allow, third eye meditations, whatever it is, um, which is huge, 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 huge. Um, but yeah, with the moon, south and the stuff besides that, it's also like a big time to learn to kind of like send love, to anyone that's wronged you, to learn, that resentments are, the expression is having a resentment, having a hate or like a bad energy towards someone. It's like drinking poison yourself and thinking that someone else will get harmed by it. Um, so there's a big opportunity in this lifetime to just, forgive people and forget. Um, and doing that, yeah, that just clears everything up and it pushes you towards your goals. It's like the whole energetic space thing. Like when you have a resentment towards someone, you are literally, that is energetic space. Let's say you have 100 energetic bandwidth each day. Do you really want to be giving 5 or 10 of those points each day to someone that you could also just do a meditation or a prayer, even if they fucked you over, and just like find compassion, find love for them. Like, let's say like examples like a narcissistic parent, right? Something that's fresh in my mind. Not that I have them, but we were talking about this in my group. And you know, I was talking about the idea of seeing other people as babies. Like if you have like criticism for other people or hate towards other people, or negative emotions for other people, just seeing them at one point in their life as just babies, innocent babies that didn't know shit. Or one day they'll be grandpas. And ever since I started looking at people like that, everything changed. Um, and that's when the real opportunities start to arise. So it's like, I think a big part of the South Node moon is understanding that a lot of your connections in this life, not just romantic, family, all that, it's karmic. And a big lesson is having that courage to have love for all these people, unconditional love. So yeah. But like I said, with the moon in an air sign, you have to go the extra mile. Like I always say, like there's the Cancer moon, the Gemini slash Aquarius moon. The same thing happens. The Cancer moon cries about it, like kind of like a cat. The cats shake things off um, when something bad happens. The Cancer moon, they cry and they get rid of the emotions. They meet their own emotional needs that way. But the Gemini or the air moon, Aquarius moon, an air sign, Libra, like they might not feel, it might be like 8 months till they actually like really, really feel it. Or they just, there can be this real mistrust for emotion, preferring logic. But yeah. Um, but yeah, so many energies in your chart, like the Venus and Mars, that just makes one very charming, like being able to be assertive and like charming slash have like a very nice smooth aura, but also like not be a pushover. And yeah, just like really wanting also in love to like have that adventure partner, that person that you can just do things with. But it also can create very, very high expectations in love, um, which can lead to letdowns too, right? Obviously. So I think that is something. If that's something that exists for you, as it does for so many people, right? Um, yeah, it's all, and it's definitely one of those lessons that's like trial and error. Um, it's very, very hard to, it's very hard to kind of like love is hard in this day and age. But taking things slow is very, very good, I think, as well with all this energy, because the Sag Venus can kind of just want to know, I want to know, I want to know, I want to know. So yeah. And yeah, I guess like what I would say about the 29 degrees, I've already kind of spoken on it, is yeah, it's like the final boss. It's like Sagittarius, it's like in this lifetime you are moving away. You are you are trying to conquer that energy of Sag. So you are trying to completely push away from that past life conditioning and find this new ground where you're constantly updating your philosophies, constantly updating your ideas of truth. If someone and not attaching your ego. Sometimes with Sag energy, I'm a Sag moon, so I know this shit well. Um, there can be this real tendency. This is like a big thing in most humans, but there can be a big tendency to attach your ideas and your philosophies um, to what you know. So let's say you're in an argument, um, you're in an argument and someone sort of proves you wrong. It could be, just sorry, one second. My thing just loaded. I have to click on this. Yeah, so convert. Good. Okay. So yeah, it could be what was I just saying? In an argument, where'd the chart go? Like, yeah, attaching too much of your ego to what you believe in. Always being okay with being wrong, using Socratic questioning. So, okay, you believe in this. Why you believe in this? So that's kind of like the path to the high Sag energy, is to not push your ideas, because the Sag 29 degrees Sag is like a master number, in with the Mercury and Venus. So um like there's a high likelihood that someone with this would have spent and be very, very deep philosophical, and would have spent a lot of their time and naturally be very, very good in these areas of thinking. So then they can see someone, let's say it's like your sibling or someone like your best friend from childhood, and you like, let's say you're really into astrology and you're like learning all this amazing stuff, and you want them to like you see how much it's helped your life, for example, and you just want to have it help their life, but they're not ready for it. So like some people with a lot of Sag will like really push, like you have to learn this, you have to learn this, and get very disappointed when the person doesn't. So that's a big lesson for Sag energy too. The lesson that everyone, that different truths exist for different people, right? Um, and ultimately it's not our place. We can plant seeds, and we can be our highest philosophical selves, and grow and grow and grow in that area. And then when people that we care about are ready, if ever, to come to us,
they come, and if they not, it's just that acceptance that um, you know, that that's not their path, or that that's not what they're willing to do. So it's really tough, but yeah. Um, yeah, I talked about like your how your energy, like you're gonna become so success. Like I don't like to make predictions like that, but like with your Mars in Capricorn, Sun in Capricorn, midheaven Capricorn, then your 10th house Saturn, like those are all energies that are saying that like, there could be early setbacks, like I said earlier, but it pushes you to be so hardworking and like if I had to predict, I would say that, like, I know it's not that hard of a prediction, but that your best days are yet to come, in success, no matter how successful you've already been. And things are just going to feel so much lighter, not just on the work level, but like on so many different levels. When you have a lot of Capricorn or Saturn in your chart, the Saturn return is more pivotal. But that doesn't mean that's not difficult. That period of time, it's usually a year. All right. Okay, so then you have Pallas and Vesta both in the 11th in Pisces. So, yeah, Pallas and Pisces is like I think of it as just like an open third eye, where you can like you have this amazing meditation capabilities where you can merge your mind with the universe. So like people have them like you have to fucking meditate. Um, so also being very good at healing people through your words, and I've seen that all over. And it's also very good for like artistic expression. And 11th house, being able to like work in a way that really, and that goes with the best of two, benefits humanity, and being able to work good with people as well. Um, but yeah, I think that like whatever, like with your work, like because the midheaven's in the ninth, with all these planets in the ninth, I think anything that teaches you about life, that teaches you about the higher truths through the work, like, you know, is something that'd be amazing. And like I said, it will be specific things, or that Gemini moon can get bored quite easily. So, for example, the client I had today live, which damn, this is my fourth session today. Killing it. Well, one was way earlier and it was a live session. I never do. I never really do like 3 readings is kind of my max, back to back to back. But I love doing. I get the momentum, but after three, I'm pretty much like. Although maybe I could probably do another one. Kind of late though. It's really late. But yeah, I could probably do. I could probably break a record tonight. I still have energy. But yeah, so like that's 11th. That just makes one very very dedicated to the group process and defining um that group of people, and your 11th house is Pisces, right? So you really want that soul tribe, right, of people that you can work with, and together you guys benefit humanity. Um so also another huge thing with your Neptune Uranus on the midheaven and invest in the 11 is that you can feel very overwhelmed by work, and if it's not like focused on helping other people. You know what I mean? So I definitely see the healer, which can play out in so many different types of careers, but I definitely see um, how there's a certain level of depth that you want. And with your North Node journey in Sag, I could definitely see, I don't know, like you'd be an amazing psychologist, especially with the Jupiter in Scorpio too, right? Because the Jupiter and Scorpio people, they are on this like intense search for truth. Um, and when they get into something, they just go all in. All right, so Sirius is in the 12th in Aries. Damn. Um, so that once again is very very good for you know helping people, like getting a lot out of helping people who are suffering. And you really feel good when you are giving to the universe, right? Nurturing yourself in that sense. And in Aries, so this is another idea for like work. Series and Aries people, they but it's not just work, it's everything. Relationships too. They feel really nurtured, cared for when they are allowed to be independent and when they are allowing others. So yeah, when people are allowing them to be independent and they're also very good at allowing others to be independent, right? They tend to believe that the best way to care for other people is to let them be themselves, and give them space. And it once again is another big uh, placement of someone who, you know, suffers when they feel like caged in relationship or in work or something like that. So I hope that kind of gives some further ideas when it comes to the work life. Let's see here. Where am I thinking? So Black Moon Lilith is in Aries. So Black Moon Lilith in astrology is it's not a planet. It represents um it represents you at you at your worst kind of, right? You at your lowest energy. Um so if you think about it, um Aries at its lowest, it can be somewhat of a bully. Like, I'm not saying you're a bully, because the thing about the Black Moon Lilith, is that it's a self-defeating behavior, um, but it's meant to be transformed. But you can really break it down into a fear, right? Like each one has a fear. But what I see a lot with Black Lilith and Aries, but it's not a planet, right? So just remember that it's something that you know will come out. We all have one. Like mine's in Scorpio, definitely can, like I hate when it comes out, but it's very, very rare. But um, you know, it can. So it's like us when we're like at our lowest vibration. Um, so, with Aries, the first sign, I tie it to a fear of being unworthy, right? Because sometimes they can really judge their own kind of they can judge how they perform and their achievements too harshly, and there can be, you know, this like feeling like they need to achieve a lot, a lot, a lot to be worthy of happiness, worthy of love. Um, and sometimes they feel like they don't deserve it on a deep level. Um, and sometimes that can lead to, so yeah, it's really important to like, convincing yourself that you don't need to do all these things and whatnot to be, you yourself are worthy, just by being you. And I think Black and Lilith and Aries can definitely, where it is here, um in the 12th, um I think like the 12th side of that is just the need, like there can be some level of like escapism. Usually, when people will have that, where they can get, but I want to talk about this in the 11th house too, though, because the class is to be in the 11th. But yeah, like there can be just this kind of escapism that can show up. So yeah. Um, but so yeah, it's a big kind of desire to learn self-discipline, be of service. But in the 11th house, what can happen there is that it can make it, in Placid's 11th house, it can sort of make it so friendships, where there can be some kind of like level of like ego that could potentially come out in friendships. So that's another potential. And even though the energy that I saw before is very, very good for working with other people. Um, there can still be that energy too. But let's see. Let's see. Well, let me see, because 28, would be here. Yeah, so it would still, yeah, it would be 11. Yeah. Um, okay, now let's open these bad boys. Okay, let's see what we got. So Algol is just under 2 degrees away from the ascendant. I don't know, I feel like that's like kind of far. There's supposed to be like a spot on that we can look at it. Okay. And yeah, we can, looking back at your email, the the follow up, we can definitely see a lot. And kind of, yeah, I mean, that one's all about, just comparing the lived experience. I forget if I told you, because I've done 3 readings, so I forget like if I told you about the current astrology one. So I don't want to say the same thing twice. Did I say it? If I did, I'm sorry. But basically, um, most people do follow up and current astrology. So if you want, I would do it for $50 less than normal price. And it's the 1 hour follow up. It's not a long wait like this. You already have the follow up. And then it is the current astro / spiritual alignment. And that it ends up being like a 3 hour. The one I did today was like over 3 hours, but it just depends on what's going on. Okay, I was just making sure you had the follow up. So yeah, you can let me know if you want to add that. Nearly everyone does. I highly, highly suggest it. All right, what is that? Okay. Ooh, look at you. So this is like a random thing I know. So first of all, so you have wow, that's so dope. So okay, this is like no one knows this besides me and like maybe a few other people. But so you have Psyche conjunct your Venus. So in a female's chart, if they have the moon or Venus conjunct Psyche, they tend to stay forever young, like looks. And already the Taurus rising, that's very good for looks, right? Venus rules your chart, like beautiful aura, very good at attracting abundance and just attracting people to you. But to have Psyche on Venus, like I literally have a friend astrologer who literally looks like she's 23 and she's like 43. And she's like doesn't eat some crazy diet or anything. She's gorgeous. And she just looks so young. Um and I verified this with some other people too. So far I haven't seen any that's gone against this. If it's in a female's chart, Venus or the moon, and you have your Venus with Psyche. So yeah, I mean, if that's the case, um, that's very, very good because it literally keeps a youthful appearance for a long, long time. And I've tested that with like 3 or 4 people. It's checked out each time. So, okay. Okay. I just lost connection for a second. Um, I was just telling you, I'm like staring at like so many planets. I'll show you, just so you know. My trained eye. That's blocking me. So yes, I somehow know. 26. Okay, so you have a more on the midheaven, which is fucking amazing. So a more is literally about unconditional love for humanity. Um, so when you have that on your midheaven, like let's say you're like a public figure or something like that, or just the people that don't know you, you would like put out this vibe of like unconditional love. And it could also feature in your career as someone who's like a very compassionate healer, right? So more is maybe my favorite asteroid besides Juno. Okay, I'll take you out of um mhm. Let me see one thing. So yeah, what can I find? Why is it not talking about Saturn? Saturn. Yeah, so Sappho. Okay, here we go. So it says the elegance of your demeanor and physique might immediately attract the attention of other women who may perceive you to be somewhat secretive and mysterious. In addition, woman, men, whatever. In addition, you may be attracted to independent, sophisticated, practical, and self-sufficient partners. You could very well enjoy a challenge. You may be more reserved about your likes and dislikes, sharing them only with those you trust. You may also be exceptionally guarded and stern in front of others, but you reveal a completely different side of yourself when alone with someone you care about. You could be well respected and love the company of other potential partners who command respect and possess excellent manners and poise when sitting and speaking. You may frequently experience an unusual sense of nostalgia for a past you never fully experienced, but feels like it was yours. Individuals' hearts will ache in a bittersweet way as they contemplate art or read beautiful poetry and silence. They are far more emotionally led on. When you have a crush one on someone, you like keeping it to yourself and not telling anyone. Some person had Sap on the 10th, and she never directly stated her love for a woman, but she expressed it, especially with her relationship with her French dancer. Okay, so is Sappho like related to like just lesbianism? Signifies talents for arts, particularly with words, the freedom to express one's sexuality is a component of Sappho, is the right to act, essentially, as one does. Yeah, I mean, like, if it's with Saturn, it can maybe, like, potentially, like, restrict that and make it a little bit more conservative. Sappho is a poet and seducer, obviously. She also loves women, haha. Therefore, the location of Sappho in your chart might reveal these abilities in you and how you can captivate others, particularly women. Additionally, it can be that what qualities you also find attractive in other women. Okay, so maybe like when I was saying partners, it's like woman. I don't know. All right. I think, well, we can talk about that too, and then we'll finish on that. So Algol, very famous asteroid, representing of a Medusa's head, gets a really bad rep, but I think it's very alchemical. It's linked to lots of artists. So it's on your ascendant. It can just like create like very like dramatic and it's not so close. So it's not gonna be like so spot on. Like if it was like within like it's like 2 degrees away, so it still counts, but it's like not much. But still, it does count. So yeah, it can create like dramatic and intense relationships, even like sex addiction. Um, they usually make someone quite sexy, even though it might not fit in like the standard kind of definition of it. And usually like quite outspoken about like taboo subjects and not afraid to be controversial. So yeah, but there's just like this great ability to be very to be a game changer, to be someone who can like be like a very like especially when you're spiritual already, to be someone who's just like alchemically like just able to like um really transform themselves. Let me make sure. Let me see if there's any aspect patterns that I didn't see. I don't think so because there weren't that many aspects. Oh, there is one. So the one thing I didn't see is the T-square between ascendant and T-squares. Usually, they don't really work with the ascendant because ascendant's not a luminary, but I still will talk about it. So the ascendant square Saturn, which that also can definitely create some shyness and difficulty with self-expression for the first 30 years. So that's another thing that will probably open up for you is your ascendant. And if you are shy, which usually Sag, Mercury's are not. But it could go back to the Chiron square moon, which could, be related to the mother and whatever, and early wounding in that area that could have led to that. But I mean, Gemini moon being shy, I mean, I haven't seen it, but you know, it could just be a confidence thing potentially, and it's the T square with so Pluto, Saturn, ascendant, and it shoots out 26 Leo, fourth house. So it's literally saying that the resolution to, that energy, and then when you have ascendant opposite Pluto, that's just like speaking to like that intensity in relationships, and this is such a perfect ending because this is like these aspects are all about the family stuff, right? um and it shoots out, the resolution point is in, I'll show you. So you see it's square here, 26, 26, 28, all 90 degrees away or close. So this is the apex, right? So it shoots out like a bow and arrow at 26 Leo right here, which is the fourth house, which literally is saying the resolution to pretty much everything um, is through fourth house, which is healing family shit, basically. And going deep within the self, that deep spiritual relationship with the self and the kind of internal shadow work. And the more kind of going back to the moon and sun quincunx, the more, and the Mars and moon quincunx, the more you can get, the more deep you can get with that mindfulness and with really going back into childhood, because there can be a lot of projection onto relationships, right? Um, the better it is. Because if I'm not saying you're like this, by the way, I'm saying that there's a potential when you have Pluto, opposite ascendant Pluto on the seventh, to project stuff from the childhood and stuff from the family energy onto the partner, and then you add Saturn to the mix, and there can be that feeling of feeling held back, right? From truly like letting the self go, right? And the Saturn's also, um, you know, squaring the descendant, right? Which could kind of, that can also lead to setbacks when it comes to love life, right? And making it so like it's really after the Saturn return that the real love life can really get going good, right? And it does. Saturn, everything with Saturn gets better with age, right? And you have a lot of Saturn, so very hopeful energy. Very good, very good. So yeah, fourth house Leo is the mix of Cancer and Leo. So it's literally like um that deep kind of Cancerian emotional relationship with yourself, but also, the whole like forgiving if there's any of that that's needed. Going deep in yourself, having that deep spiritual relationship with yourself, mindfulness. But then Leo is the inner child, which is your Chiron fifth house, and the need to just be in touch with that really fun. So, whether it's through children that comes, whether it's through your own creative outlets, whether it's through just increased awareness, I don't know. But yeah, yeah. All right, so that is it. So about everything I told you. So you can just let me know. Remind me, I said it. I give you $50 off. Um. So yeah. Take your time with this. I did a really long one for you. Damn, you're like 2 hours. I've been not doing 2 hour ones lately, so you must have some good karma or something. I don't know. But I'm gonna go to bed in a little bit. But thank you so much, and I look forward to hearing back from you. I hope you enjoy. I hope this is awesome for you. Lots of info. Take your time, and when we have the follow up, definitely take notes. Most people have to watch it a lot of times. Very complex stuff, but lots of stuff. So thank you, and ciao, ciao.